I want to take a moment to welcome you to the It's So Much More weekly masterclass. And this week is super exciting because we are talking about circulation and blood oxygen as the foundational first step to optimal wellness. And this is really the second class, but it's the first step in our Mind Body Wellness series. So I'm really super excited because this is really the foundation to healing. This is improving circulation, blood oxygen, and anemia for optimal wellness. And in the last class, we talked about the mind-body connection to optimal wellness and how dysfunction and disease happens in the body, right? And so we know that there are essentially, science has shown us now, science is finally catching up with ancient wisdom is what I should say, but science has shown us that there are basically like three major brain centers in the body, right? So we have the brain, the one in our head, and then we have the heart, and then we have the gut, right? And each one of these has their own neurological system of network, that then they all talk to each other. And then we have all of these systems of communication that communicate everything between these. And so we have the immune system, we have the endocrine system, and so, and we have like peptides and all kinds of things that are used to communicate between them. And so what we know is that no matter what is going on with your body, right, whether it's brain fog or whether it's irritable bowel syndrome or whether it's, like you have pain in your gut or you have tightness in your chest or whatever the symptoms are, whether it be physical, emotional, or mental challenges, whatever it is, doesn't matter, because the root cause is a dysfunction or imbalance within the mind-body connection and how all of our systems work, right? And then we discussed that there is a roadmap to optimal wellness, right? And so that we talked that you want to nourish and optimize each phase of the roadmap on a daily basis. And then we also discussed how there's actually a phase of healing, right? There's a certain system, a sequence that we want to address things first, so you're not jumping around and focusing on things that may not be as important at the time. So on our roadmap to optimal wellness, we have balance, right? And this is balancing cellular fuel delivery. Then we have lift. We want to lift metabolic and immune function. And then our third step or third phase in our roadmap to wellness and so that's clarifying that toxic buildup and stabilizing the endocrine function. And last week we talked about how we have pathogens and viruses and all the things that we deal with in our lives that come in and they build up toxicity. And then of course our fourth phase is the calm, and that is calming our daily stresses. We deal with stress every single day, and it's actually good, right? Like we have to have stress to a certain extent. If bones don't have stress, they break. If we don't have a little bit of stress, then we actually won't be healthy. But then there's like too much stress, and we want to calm that too much chronic stress. And then we also want to restore nutritional energy. And we discussed last week very briefly about our foods not having the same type of energy and nutrition that they used to. So that we have to consciously make choices to put optimal nutrition in our body. And so the very first step in this roadmap to optimal wellness here is balancing cellular fuel delivery. And so what does that look like, right? Well, fuel delivery is really what's happening inside your cells, right? It's how we move nutrients to every single cell in our body, and it's done usually through the blood, right? And so there's two steps in this sequence that we really want to look at. So the first step is circulation and blood oxygen, and the second step is blood sugar. So this week, we're going to focus on circulation and blood oxygen, and next week, we're going to talk about balancing blood sugar. So when we talk about circulation and blood oxygen, or to use one of those medical terms I learned in college, which I don't get to use a lot very often, it would be called perfusion, right? And so perfusion is basically describing the injection of fluid, or in this case, blood, the injection of blood into your tissues and your organs and how it moves the cells and puts them all where they're supposed to be. Now, this is important because this is how your body delivers nutrients throughout the entire body. Specifically, it also delivers oxygen throughout your entire body. So this is important because without oxygen, we'll die, right? And if any tissue is not getting oxygen, it will actually degrade and die as well. So what's important to know is that getting oxygen into the cells is actually only half the job. The other half is waste removal. So there's always an exchange and transport happening at the cellular level. There's nutrients going in the cells, and then there's waste, cellular waste coming out of the cells. So not only do you deliver fuel to your tissues through the blood, but you have to be able to remove waste from those tissues as well. And this is vitally important because if you have an imbalance in this cellular fuel delivery system, you're not able to carry out either of those things. You will not get oxygen into the cells, and you will not be able to remove the waste from the cells. So there's a saying that we hear a lot, that is, you are what you eat. But the reality is, you are what gets transported into your cells, right? So let's say you bought something online and you put the order in and you're eagerly awaiting for it to arrive, but the mailman failed to deliver the package to your door. So you bought it, but you actually still can't use it. That's kind of the same thing, right? This is what happens when we eat healthy or we're exercising and we're uptaking oxygen. But the nutrients cannot get delivered into the cells through our blood to our tissue. So a lot of people think that digestion is actually the most important step to healing. And of course, digestion is important. As a matter of fact, we will be discussing that topic specifically in a couple of weeks. But even before digestion, we have to talk about energy and fuel delivery and how the nutrients get into the cells of the body. And I'll be really honest with you, this is often overlooked in not only conventional healthcare, but it's also very much overlooked even in like functional medicine or natural alternative care, because there's truly a lack of understanding of the priority of the healing sequence of the body. So when we look at the priority of the healing sequence, the best example I can give you is if you're driving down the street and you come across a car accident and there's a person that's unconscious and not breathing and they have a broken leg, and you come across them and you're trying to help them, which one do you do first? Well, if you've ever taken a CPR class, then you know that the first thing that you address always is the airway, right? So you want to work on restoring their breathing first. Now, a lot of time in a health journey, you might think, oh, I have this symptom. It's like hormonal imbalance or it's brain fog. So I might need to take something for that. Maybe I need to take something to restore hormones or my brain. But the truth is that rather than just jumping all the way down the roadmap to hormone balance or to neurotransmitters in the brain, we always want to first look at the beginning steps, right? And we want to look at blood oxygen and cellular fuel delivery first. So how does an imbalance in cellular fuel delivery look? Well, really and truly, if there's an imbalance in cellular fuel delivery, it affects every single system in the body. Because remember, every single thing in the body needs oxygen. So it's going to affect the brain. It's going to affect the heart. It's going to affect the gut. It's going to affect the immune system, the endocrine system. All of the systems get affected when there's an imbalance in cellular fuel delivery. So the first things that we see is you can have high blood pressure, right? And you could also have low blood pressure, and they lead to the same thing, right? So when you have high blood pressure, you have vasoconstriction, where the blood vessels are constricted, and therefore they allow less blood to flow through them. And that's why the pressure is higher, right? It's kind of like if you put your thumb over the garden hose end and the pressure increases and you get to shoot the water out a lot further, right? And then there's like low blood pressure, which is just as bad. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, low blood pressure, I think, is actually even more challenging to the body, but in a totally different way from high blood pressure. Of course, high blood pressure obviously can be a risk for stroke and cardiovascular disease, but low blood pressure means that you don't even have enough pressure going to the cells at all, right? And so that can be a really big problem because it means that you're not getting nutrient delivery into the cells. It means that you're not getting waste removal out of the cells. So that's the first two things that show up for people when they have an imbalance in the circulation and blood oxygen. Another thing that shows up is thermal regulation. So if you are always cold, right? Especially if you have cold hands, cold feet, or if your nose is always cold. Sometimes people just struggle to warm up. They might be cold all over. So if you're cold all over, usually you don't have balanced blood flow. And another symptom we see with imbalanced blood flow is hair loss. And people usually come to me and they're like, really, Erica, hair loss? Yes. If you can't deliver blood flow to the scalp, then your hair follicle doesn't get nourished and it degrades, and you can suffer from hair loss, which is a symptom of a circulation problem. As a matter of fact, if you go to have like hair restoration, a lot of times the treatments that they use are some kind of a laser treatment that actually stimulates blood flow to the scalp itself. And a lot of like topical treatments, that's all they're doing. So we can actually look at this symptom from the inside out by stimulating and balancing and nourishing circulation and blood oxygen. So another thing is we see nutrient deficiencies and micronutrient deficiencies because, you know, you'll have like vitamin D or vitamin B or magnesium deficiencies, right? This is usually a sign of cellular fuel delivery problem, and it's like a circulation issue. And another one, of course, we see is inflammation and slow wound healing. This is another one. So I always tell people, if you have cold hands and cold feet and your blood pressure is low and your wounds don't heal up pretty quickly, you probably want to look at, you know, circulation and really start to focus in on that. Now, remember, we're always nourishing every single phase of the roadmap. We want to do that on a daily basis. But when we're trying to target like maybe one particular challenge that we're working with, then we can look at that particular thing and start to add in extra nutrition that will help us to address those issues. So the thing that happens is that when we have the inflammation and everything else, oftentimes we'll start to become toxic. Because remember, what happens is that the oxygen goes in the cells and all the nutrients go in the cells, and then the waste is taken out of the cells, right? So one of the symptoms that we get when people get really toxic and these toxins are circulating in the body is nausea. Now, I don't know if anyone here had ever was pregnant or had morning sickness. Well, that morning sickness is a sign that your body is not able to eliminate the waste, the cellular waste. Specifically in pregnancy, it's usually the hormonal waste. It's not able to remove them from the body. So it gets nausea. That's how it gets rid of them, because it's like, whoa, this is way too much hormonal waste for my blood. Let me just get all of this out of our body as quickly as possible. So if you had the fortunate pleasure, as I did, to have morning sickness literally from the time I found out I was pregnant all the way until I delivered, every single day, my body obviously could not deal with eliminating those hormonal waste. And I had nausea every single day. My body had to get that out. And interestingly enough, as soon as I got rid of it, then I felt great for the rest of the day. So it just happened every single morning for me. And so that's, and that is an imbalance, right? So we also have brain and mind symptoms. So you have like brain fog, fatigue, mood changes, anxiety. The thing about it is our brain is an energy hog, okay? It requires a ton of energy just to think a thought, right? And our brain is thinking like 80,000 thoughts a day. So our brain needs tons of nutrition, right? Because it needs tons of energy. So it is if you do not get the right circulation and blood oxygen going to the brain, your brain will not be optimized, and you will feel less focused and have more brain fog and just feel tired or lethargic. Lately, I've been talking to a lot of people that are just telling me, I just feel blah, like lethargic. Like I just don't feel like I don't have any specific symptoms, but I just feel kind of blah. That's usually a sign of the body's circulation and blood oxygen just really not flowing optimally. And so, and then of course we have toenail fungus and a lot of other types of things in our extremities that can also be signs of the same problem. What's important to know is that in this roadmap to optimal wellness, we want to address these things. We're looking at addressing them nutritionally, right? And so there's a lot of options for us. And so one of the things that we talk about is that, of course, we've talked about Vital and basically anything in the balance category, right? In the balance category of Solle Naturals, all of those products that have green labels on them, they are really nutritionally dense. And so they're able to give our body a lot of nutrition to help us balance out the circulation and blood oxygen. But sometimes we might need a little bit more. And specifically, we might need some help with the circulation and blood oxygen on specifically the waste removal side. Because remember, I said there's two sides of transport. One is delivering the nutrients into the body. And so we've talked about that a lot over the last weeks. That's, we're drinking our Vital, we're drinking Royal, we're taking other products that have like green labels. But another one is removing things, okay, getting things out of our body. And so there's a few products that I could have highlighted tonight. But the one that really came up for me a lot was Solle. So I have asked Greg Halliday, the president and founder of Solle Naturals, to come and talk to us specifically about Solle and its role and how it can help us possibly in balancing this circulation, blood oxygen, anemia, and really just supporting our clarification and heart health in general.
I'm happy to do that, Erica, as best I can. I'm just sitting here kind of enjoying the teaching and mesmerized as always every week. I love these classes. So glad you're doing them. And this kind of time spent is the best because it not only helps us, but it will help everyone that we open our mouth to share it with. And that's one of the really great things about being part of the Solle family. And I can tell you, it's a constant flow of good news and a constant, I don't know how to describe it. Words kind of aren't really adequate, but it's a constant flow of people telling what's changed for them and that everything is so much better. This kind of information is life-changing, I've always felt. And I'm grateful for Erica's time in preparing this. Solle is the product she asked me to talk about. It's one of those kind of products, really simply put, it's so central and so basic. You'll see it in a lot of programs, probably most of them. And there's a reason for it. There's something special about healthy and good fats, and in particular, these fats that are described by omegas, but that are called in particular omegas because there are other fats. But the thing is, I want to say that what is unique about the omegas and Solle is that they all come from plants. And because they come that way, they come with so much more. One of the early lessons that I learned, so fortunate to be part of this for a little more than 30 years, is that we are very much trained to extract substances that are known to be beneficial out of their source. And the body can, we've pretty much proven it over the last number of decades. We can take those kind of capsules and pills and tablets, and the body will absorb some of it, or a little more of it, or even a lot of it. But what I've learned and what I've seen, and even more so since we founded Soul Naturals, if we can provide them in their source, so not quit extracting one thing, or like in the case of Soul Omega, it's just an omega, and feeding it to us this way, we get so much more out of it. And I'll give you an example. Soul Omegas has, I'm trying to think here. Well, I've got a bottle here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sources of omegas. The number one source in the bottle is sea buckthorn. Because of our location here, I knew a gentleman and his staff who started a company, an entire company based on sea buckthorn. They were able to, because of how amazingly diverse this particular plant is, and omegas are part of it. We're talking everything from skincare to almost any product you could imagine. But what they would do is they'd extract parts of it and then create a product, extract another part and create a product, split it all up. I'm actually proposing at Soul for the last decade, let's not split them up. Let's do our best to get them in their whole state. But I do think we need to concentrate them. And that's what we've done with Soul Omegas. So Soul Omegas is the seed. And this is what's interesting. This product, they're all seeds. If you look at them, which is really, really interesting, they're the concentrated part that is pressed for the omega, but also includes the other components in the seed. Sea buckthorn, that's an exception because it's sea buckthorn fruit and seed. And the reason for that is the fruit is loaded with these healthy fats too, among them omegas. So we could just put omegas in here from plants. We could extract them away, or we can give you the whole pressed part of that plant that contains the omega. And yes, it dominates that part of the plant. So it's in an oil base, but the rest of that seed is in there as well. And so the only part that is strained away is the husk, okay? But the rest of that is there. And so what you get, to go back to the sea buckthorn, is not just omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, and because of the fruit, omega-7, 4 different kinds of omegas. In other words, a very balanced omega, but you also get the other 180 some odd beneficial plant compounds, vitamins, minerals, this huge variety of fatty acids. You get all of it, and the body needs all of it and uses it. And it's not always clear in science, not today anyway, maybe it will be in some time, why it just works better with it. But what we can tell you from our experience in Soul, I mean, one of my favorite stories to share is Lydia. It's your grandpa, right, Lydia? He was using an animal sourced omega for many years because it made a big difference. Lydia, how many was he using a day of this animal? And then when Soul Omegas came out, now these are just from plants. A lot of people have the misconception that, oh, if I want the strong stuff, I'll get animal.
Right.
And I will tell you why they say that. But plants, again, I want to submit to you, more powerful, because I define powerful as how much the body does with the same amount of product. So back to Lydia's grandpa, how much was he using of the animal?
My grandfather had a issue with not being able to urinate, to pee. And so they put a, what is that called? Help me in English.
Catheter?
Catheter. I can never pronounce that right. And they were giving him from this other company, part of the program that he was on, he was taking at least 6 omegas. So he was taking 2-3 times a day to bring down the inflammation, was what we were trying to work on, so that he could eventually pee, which we were hoping for. And doctor said, yeah, that's not going to happen. But we ran out of it. And we had just started with Soul, and I kept pushing Soul to my parents. Yes, I did push. And it wasn't happening, but we ran out. And my dad was a big believer in Soul, but my mother just really wasn't ready to make the switch. And so she said, okay, we ran out. We got to give him what we have. And 1 Soul Omega is what they gave him. 1 or 2, maybe. I don't even remember if it was 1 or 2. They probably know the story better, but it wasn't more than that.
Yeah.
And the nurse would come in and take care of my grandfather for a few hours in the morning. And day 2 of doing that, she said, what are you guys giving him? because he's peeing. We were like, what? And long story short, they took the catheter out. Something that we thought wasn't going to happen because my grandfather was 101 or 102 at that moment.
And I can tell you, I've heard that story repeated, thanks, Lydia, so many different times. These plant omegas, and that's another difference so one difference of soul omegas is you get the rest of what's in chia seed and flax seed and black currant oil, which has all sorts of stress leveling studies. I mean, I think of the list that Erica just taught us, all those indicators, and I can tell you that omegas and what comes with them in a plant source, they are functional in influencing all of those, virtually that entire list and more. Of course, that's not an exhaustive list. So that's the second thing, is that you get a much higher variety. The third thing is you don't deal with any of the quality issues of omegas from an animal source and ocean source, where I can tell you there are a number of issues that are hit and miss in quality there in terms of heavy metals and other problems that traditionally have happened with those. But so you get this huge variety. And in tests, as Erica said, science is kind of validating a lot of what we've learned over time in history and what we've seen actually using these products. And I will tell you, every single measure that is very common for the health of your circulation, like pressure, like sugar levels, like good fats and fat levels in there, and the state of the fats, right? All of those are influenced by simply adding healthy fats and good omegas. So I always have to sort of say omegas in quotes, because soul omegas are omegas in their state. And that's why you see the studies and you see so much more, but I can't think of a better thing to boost blood. And they're so directly talked about with brain health. Well, I think Erica already explained why. So you kind of focus on blood and all those markers that she's talking about. About the only one that I really don't know, is oxygen levels. But I know that Soul Vital, which we've kind of talked about, that's kind of where it's centered there in terms of directly relating that to omegas. But all the rest of them, I can tell you, can relate directly to the omegas. People talk about EPA and DHA and how that's something only created. You don't get those from plants. And you'll hear that a lot with omegas. And I just wanted to bring it up because when you get omegas in their state, in their source, in good sources, the body actually is quite efficient. And I will flat out disagree with publication in science where they say, oh yeah, the body makes EPA and DHA, but it's not very efficient at it. Yeah, depending on what you feed it, and also depending on how balanced you are. When you work on yourself, it's amazing. Ergo, Lydia's grandpa. How efficient is a 101-year-old that's doing quite efficient? And they were working in a balanced way with him. Yeah. And so he was getting that, and you add this in, his body was able to work with it, and you'll be shocked at the results. So like better skin, no brain fog, so many different things that are attributed to omegas, to me, just ratchet that up a couple of levels when you get them from plants. So anyway, Erica, yes, omegas, plant source, the most powerful source, a good variety. I didn't really mention the individual ingredients, but they come from various parts of the world. So you're not going to really get this mix if you just go down locally and try to combine. That's another thing Soul can bring, is because we source globally. Like one of the new ingredients we added was perilla, which is Korea and that area of the world. Again, another seed. So I just think, boy, it is a basic. And I will tell you my final comment. This is a little bit of a confession too. It was something that had fallen off my regimen, but I can tell you now I've made this change: 2 in the morning, 2 at night. Now that's more than I was doing because I just maintenance 2. Okay, but I'm just doing that right now, felt the gap. And I will just tell you, even though I already feel pretty good, but I can run myself a little ragged, biking and running and things, noticeably better adding the omegas. So sometimes you might want to ratchet it up for a period of time, and you'll know when you can back it down to maintenance.
Love it. love Solmegas. I'll tell you, I was feeling the effects of not having my Solmegas during the drought. I have decided that I will never not have backups just in case that happens again. Because when I don't take it, I immediately start to notice my skin change. Like it starts to get dry very quickly. And even though I take other products that have healthy fats, there's just something about Solmegas. And I know it's exactly what you're saying. It's that completeness of it. And it giving us such like really beautiful balance of everything that we need and that completeness with all the other stuff. I mean, we could probably do like 4 or 5 classes on sea buckthorn alone. It's so powerful, right? I mean, it is, it's just such an incredible product. But while I have you and we're talking about Solmegas, a question that comes up often about just in general when people think about other Solmegas is the gel capsule. So I would love for you to just real quickly talk about what makes the Solmegas gel capsule that we put it in a little bit different than what people will see in other gel caps.
Yeah, I mean, usually I will tell you 90% of the time, maybe higher. I'll be generous. 90% of the time, it's animal gelatin, which comes from parts that you don't want me to repeat. So to be nice, I'm not going to say where they come from. They're highly heated, processed, but you know what? They're really easy to work with. And when it comes to manufacturing, it is by far the easiest material because they less energy expenditure to get it to stick and not have leakers, which is a big worry because these are oil-based. Then when you get natural state omegas, then you have other components of plants in there that make it even more difficult for them. So almost always, and we obviously connected in with a global supply community, often we'll have people, oh, you need to please come and use us, so much less expensive, so much quicker lead time, you could cut it into a third of the time it's taking you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is we don't like those sources. When you go to vegetable, our soft gel is actually a vegetable source. It actually is simply Irish moss. Now on the label you'll see, because it has a little recipe there, and all of those components are on our label. I think it's sorbitol, glycerin, purified water, and non-GMO vegetable starch, and carrageenan from Irish moss. Now, all of those very safe, good sources. The carrageenan gets attention because you've seen some negative internet write-ups because there are processed carrageenans. So like anything else, they can look at the structure and why do they want to process them? I would call it semi-synthetic. It's just easier to work with. They don't have to deal with as delicate humidity, temperature control, and things that have to be in the whole soft gel process. So when you look around the world, I'll tell you, there are like 3 or 4, and you didn't hear that wrong, who can even do what we need. One that does it to the level that we require. But I can tell you our carrageenan there's nothing modified about it. It is the only really reliable vegetable. There is tapioca out there, but if you put our whole seed omegas in them, it will degrade it and they would leak because we looked into that. There are other options there. So carrageenan just has that perfect balance from Irish moss. There will probably be other things, I'm sure, discovered. And if there are good plant options and we like aspects of them even better, carrageenan it's not a nutritional component that we have to have, but it is very reliable. And it is something that went from when you get it from Irish moss and it's pure, it's great in the body. There are nutrients and no kind of detriment. And that's probably worth mentioning. But yes, the soft gels are a big deal. Same thing with our capsules that are vegetable capsules. You know what? It's changing in 10 years. More and more are moving to this. It used to be these capsules were 2 and 3 times the animal gelatin in price. The more people gravitate to this, you'll have more demand, and it actually helps the cost basis to it and mitigates inflation. So, but we're only gonna provide the vegetable quality and the high plant quality, the highest that science knows of at the time. Because yeah, I'm putting 2 to 4 in my body every day, right? And people are putting them in. It's a nutrient component. We want it to be something that people can scale up to their needs and not be concerned about the gel cap.
I love that. And I just thought you were going to tell me just one little thing, and then I was like, just blessed with all.
There's a bunch. Sorry about that.
I'm not even complaining. I love it all. But this does give me a brief opportunity. I have the opportunity now to talk about, that soul certain guarantee. And I remember a few years back, my soul megas had come to me, and it was in the heat of summer, and they ended up coming. And when I opened them, there was like this, it was like darker spot than normal. And it always has like a beautiful little darker, little tinge in there.
A lecithin cloud.
Yes, the lecithin cloud. Yes. But this one was like a lot darker than normal. And I remember at the time, I was like, what is this? And it was particularly hot that year at that time. And I remember going to Blake about Blake, what is this in my soul megas? And Blake was like, well, give it to me. Let me take it and test it. And it was so quickly for Soul to get it in on that Monday. And then I think by Wednesday, we had results of it's perfectly fine. It's not going to harm you. It's probably just the lecithin itself probably just colored because of the heat in transport. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, because I remember Blake saying, but if you don't like the color, if it bothers you, just send it back and we'll send you a new bottle. And I was like, huh, they would just, make me happy no matter what, just because I didn't like the color. And so I love the fact that Soul takes all of those extra steps, just like you said, with the gelatin and the gel caps and everything else, all the extra steps, because we want to make sure that we're putting these things in our body, that we can scale it, that we can take as much of it as our body needs and get the results of these incredible plants. And Soul Megas is one of my favorites. So I love Soul Megas for that reason. And I thank you so much for giving us all this information about Soul Megas tonight. All right. Now I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Again, your wellness is so much more than physical. It includes everything: mind, body, emotions, all the things. And we have the sequence, we have the road. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, guys. And I can't wait to see y'all next week. Bye-bye.